what ideas in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence do you think are the most important to the success of the United States of America?
I'll answer the question, but before answering the question, I want to register a dissent from Yaron's.
Is it the public education? Is it which?
No. Actually, we're not so far apart on public education. I'm actually kind of surprised that you're so anti-Bismarck, because his national public school system was created in order to stick it to the church. It was the church that ran the schools before then. And okay, but so that's a different...
I'm all for sticking it to the church.
Right,
any opportunity, but not when the alternative is the nation.
Right,
I'd rather see free educational system, where freedom is in education.
Okay, so I want to register a dissent about Lincoln. Look, Lincoln is an important figure and a great man, and he was presiding over a country which at that point was pretty Jeffersonian in terms of its self-perception. He said what he needed to say. I'm not going to criticize him, but I don't accept the idea that the Declaration of Independence, which starts one revolution, is of a piece with the second Constitution, the Constitution of 1787, the Nationalist Constitution, which is effectively a counter-revolution. What happens is there is a revolution. It's based on certain principles. There are a lot, not exactly, but in many ways resemble the later ideas of the French Revolution. And what the Federalist Party does, the Nationalist Conservative Party does, is a counter-revolution to reinstate the Old English Constitution. So these documents are, if you're willing to accept the evidence of history, they are in many respects contrary to one another. And so if I'm asked what's the most important values that are handed down by these documents, I don't have an objection to life, liberty, and property, all of which are really important things. I do have an objection to the pompous overreach of these are self-evident, which is absurd. They can't be self-evident. If they were self-evident, then somebody would have come up with them, like 2,000 years before. It's not self-evident, and so that's damaging. I like the conservative preamble of the Constitution, which describes the purposes of the national government that's being established. There are seven purposes: a more perfect union, which is the principle of cohesion, justice, domestic peace, common defense, the general welfare, which is the welfare of the public as a thing that's not only individuals, but there is such a thing as a general welfare. Liberty, which we agree is absolutely crucial, and posterity, the idea that the purpose of the government is to be able to sustain and grow this independent nation, and not only to guarantee rights no matter what happens.
But you don't like we hold these truths to be self-evident. So you're definitely a Beatles guy. You don't want the pompous. You don't need that revolutionary strength.
I think that expression, self-evident truths, it does tremendous damage, because it instead of a moderate skepticism, which says, look, we may not know everything, it says, look, we know everything. Here it is. Here's what we know. We know.
We don't know everything. But we think.
So I'll agree with Yoram. I don't like self-evident. I don't like self-evident because he's absolutely right. It's not self-evident. These are massive achievements. These are massive achievements of enlightened thinking, of studying history, of understanding human nature, of deriving a truth from 3,000 years of historical knowledge and a better understanding of human nature and a capacity. It's using reason in some ways better than any human beings have. The Founding Fathers are giants historically, in my view, because they came up with these truths. I do think they're truths, but they're certainly not self-evident. If they were, Yoram is right, they would have discovered them thousands of years earlier, or everybody would accept them, right? How many people today think that what they state in that document is true? Pretty much, 5 people. I don't know. It's very
your criticism of modern society. Yes, we'll get there.
It's very, very few people recognize it. If they were self-evident, bam, everybody would have become, would have accepted the American Revolution as truth, and that was it. A lot of work has to go into understanding and describing and convincing people about those truths. But I completely disagree with Yoram about this idea, or I'll voice my dissent, as we said.
Register your official dissent.
about A, that this being two different revolutions, and B, that the American Revolution had any similarity to the French Revolution.
You know that Jefferson and Paine they were in France, running a different revolution.
I know, but they were writing constantly. I mean, they were in communication with Madison. There was a lot of input going on.
I know, and Jefferson's sitting there in Paris pulling his hair out because Madison has come under the influence of these nationalists, and he can't believe it.
The reality is that the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution is vast, and it is a deep philosophical difference, and it's a difference that expressed, I think, between the differences. Yoram, in his writings, lumps Rousseau with Locke and with Voltaire and with others, and I think that's wrong. I think Rousseau is very different than the others. I think, again, Rousseau is an anti-Enlightenment figure. Rousseau is in many respects hearkening back to a past, an ancient past, and I think a completely distorted view of human nature, of human mind. He rejects reason. I mean, Rousseau is on the premise that reason is the end of humanity. Reason is the destruction of humanity. Reason is how we get civilization, and civilization is awful because
I don't disagree. Yeah. We're only talking about different texts. When I say I'm just talking about the social contract.
Yeah, but the social contract, there's similarity between others, but he takes it in a completely different direction. And we agree, a social contract is a bad idea. But you can't have a contract that you don't actually voluntarily accept. But Rousseau is the French Revolution. Rousseau is about destruction and mayhem and chaos and anarchy. He is the spirit behind the French Revolution. I think the American Revolution is a complete rejection of Rousseau. I think Jefferson is a complete rejection of Rousseau. I don't think Jefferson is a fan of Rousseau. He is of Voltaire, and he certainly is of Montesquieu. If you look at the Federalist Papers, the intellectual most cited in the Federalist Papers, I think, in terms of just the number of times it's cited, is Montesquieu. So I think that the American Revolution is an individualistic revolution. It is a revolution about the rights of the individual. The French Revolution is a negation of the rights of the individual. It's a collectivistic revolution. It's not quite the Marxist revolution of the proletarian, but it's defining people in classes, and it's a rebellion against a certain class, and kill them all, right? Off with their heads. And it is a negation. It's about egalitarianism in the sense of equality of outcome, not in a sense of equality before the law or equality of rights, which is the Jeffersonian sense. So I think it's wrong to lump Jefferson in to the fraternity, egalitarian notion of the French, which is far more similar to what ultimately became socialism and Marxism, and kind of that tradition. It's anti-individualistic, the French Revolution is, whereas the American Revolution, the first one, is individualistic. It's all about individual rights. And while there's certain phrases in the Declaration of Independence that I don't agree with, it's beautifully written and it's a magnificent document. So it's hard for me to say I don't agree. Who am I, right? These were giants. Self-evident is one of them. I'm not particularly crazy about endowed by the creator, but I like the fact that it's creator and not God, or not a specific creator, but just kind of a more general thing. But putting those two ashes aside, it's the greatest political document in all of human history, in my view, by far. Nothing comes close. It is a document that identifies the core principles of political truism, of truth. That is, the role of government is to preserve and to protect these rights, these inalienable rights. And that is so crucial, that these rights are inalienable. That is, a majority can't vote them out. A revelation can't vote them out. This is what is required for human liberty and human freedom. The right, that is, the sanction, the freedom to act on your own behalf, to act based on your own judgment, and as long as you're not interfering with other people's rights, you are free to do so. That is such a profound truth, and that to me is the essence of political philosophy. That's the beginning, and it's based on just to not fall into Yoram's going to say it's a rationalist. It's based on a whole history of what happens when we negate that. It's based on looking at England and seeing, to the extent that they practiced a respect for individual liberty, of property, of freedom, good things happened. So let's take that all the way. Let's not compromise on that aspect. Let's be consistent with the good and reject the bad. And when England goes away, distance itself from the rights of man, from the idea of a right to property and so on, bad things happen. And when they go to, let's go all in. And I'm all in on the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think the idea of pursuit of happiness is profound because it's a moral statement. It's a statement that says that sanctions and says that ultimately people should be allowed to make their own judgments and live their lives as they see fit based on how they view happiness. They might be right, they might be wrong, but we're not going to dictate what happiness entails and dictate to people how they should live their lives. We're going to let them figure that out. So it has this self-interested moral code kind of embedded in it. So I think it's a beautiful statement. So I think the Declaration is key. And I think there was an experiment, and the experiment was post in that period of before the Constitution, where the experiment was, let's let the states, let's have a kind of a loose confederation. Let's let the states experiment with setting up their own constitutions and role of government, and we won't have any kind of unity. And I think what they realized, and I think even Jefferson realized, is that was not workable because many of the states were starting to significantly violate rights. There was nothing to unify. There was nothing to really protect the vision of the Declaration. You needed to establish a nation, which is what the Constitution does. It establishes a nation. But the purpose of that was to put everybody under one set of laws that protected rights. The focus was still on the protection of rights. And I agree with 6 of the 7 of the principles, right?
Which did you disagree with?
The common welfare, which the general welfare, which I worry about, right? I think in the way the founders understood it, I think I probably agreed with it.